Okay, I will get started here. I appreciate everyone joining today. This is our fifth information session for organic lawn care. I will put these up on our website and on our YouTube page, so you can always refer back to any of the other ones that we've done this season. You can share them with people. If you have any questions, you can put that in the chat, and then I will look at that as we're talking, but feel free to interrupt me as well. But then we'll have some time at the end for any questions that you have. Okay, so let's see. Ooh, sorry, just make sure this works here. Okay, so I'm gonna call us, we're into late summer. So some of the things that we're gonna talk about today is gonna be weed control for this time of year, symptoms of disease, because we're seeing a lot of that right now, and then also fall services, which will be starting here shortly. So one thing that I wanted to mention that I hate to put a picture of snow up there right now, but we do a lot of thinking ahead and also thinking about what happened last winter. So a lot of things that we're seeing this year, which in terms of weeds, in terms of just kind of general lawn decline, some stressed out lawns. It does have to do with the lack of snowfall that we had last winter and really the winter before that. I know that the University of Minnesota has been doing some research on what things we can kind of expect if we start to continue to have winters like we have had. You might notice that there's a lot of, I've seen a lot of dead trees, a lot of dead shrubs, things like hostas that are very hardy that didn't come back. So that's just something to keep in mind, in particular to weeds. The lack of snow covered that we had over the winter allowed some of those heat zones in our lawns and sunny spots in the lawns. It allowed those weeds to germinate very early when the sunlight was able to hit the soil. Some of those repercussions we see now in the hot summer months when those weeds are out competing our cool season grasses. I haven't seen a ton of winter kill, but some signs of it. So just something to keep in mind and hoping that this winter might prove to be different than the last two. So when I talk about heat zones, I'm talking about areas that are adjacent to concrete. They could be south-facing slopes, even areas that get a lot of traffic that maybe an area where a male person might be walking, something that gets traffic and it gets exposed to sunlight earlier than other parts of the lawn. Here you can see in this picture here to the left, where the corn gluten is working well, where you can see the property line. Corn gluten is meant to prevent crabgrass in areas that are not maybe as sunny. It can do a good job in certain areas like the second picture adjacent to concrete. You think about that soil that could have heated up to 55 degrees, as early as February, March, early April, before we were able to get out there in the corn gluten. When we talk about 5 to 10% of tolerance, a lot of times we're talking about these heat zone areas that are more difficult to control. This picture just shows it along some pavers within the lawn. And then this picture on the right, I like to show where you can see that a downspout is here. So when we look at weeds, why they're there, I really take a look at what is going on in the lawn. So areas that are getting watered more often might promote healthier grass, and healthy grass is going to withstand weeds better. Areas that are more stressed out, that might be experiencing some drought or heat stress, that might be going dormant, then some of these heat-loving weeds would have easier opportunity to outcompete them during these hot summer months. So those are typical areas for us to have challenges with our organic lawn care approach. Crabgrass is one that we're seeing a lot of. It's really right now it's pretty much outside of any opportunity to control what is there, even with chemicals. It is a warm season annual. It will start germinating once the soil reaches 55 degrees. The corn gluten can prevent 25% of all summer annuals the first year, 50% the second year, 75 the third year. We would corn gluten's not going to prevent all weeds, and some of those are in those heat zones that we're talking about, where it just doesn't have the right opportunity. There is a chemical that works well as a post-emergent called quinclorac. That really needs to be applied in the first tiller stages. So right now our crabgrass is on probably a third or fourth tiller stage. That means the plants and how it's growing out. So it's quite mature. Once the weather cools, this weed will die. And then we have another opportunity next season to prevent it. One of the other strategies is making sure we have thick, healthy grass. So if in areas that are bare, getting some grass established in the fall is a really good way to help prevent that for the next season. And so we're entering kind of into our seeding time. Oh, and I wanted to talk about a little bit about how crabgrass is very unique in the way that it biologically helps protect itself and helps carry from year to year. So it's spreading all of its seeds in the spring. It's a prolific seed spreader, like maybe 120,000 seeds per plant, something around there. But when it dies, it will die and it will kind of flatten out, and that's its way to then overwinter. It'll completely die off and create these open spaces of soil. So then those open spaces of soil, they can put new seeds in there and have some space to germinate. So thick, healthy grass is a really good way to help prevent more and more of this each year. So the weed control that we're just finishing up right now is our late summer corn gluten. That's going to help with the winter annuals. So there are plants that set seed now, then they overwinter and germinate in the spring. So that corn gluten is going to prevent some of that. There is a lot less weeds that are winter annuals. So not as much as we do have in the springtime. The liquid iron that we're applying, we're still applying it now. We will through fall. Just a note that we can apply liquid iron 24 hours before seeding. So anyone that's doing any seeding efforts on their own or thinking about how we're scheduling liquid iron, we can do it the day before we start seeding. We can add liquid iron in for some of the tough weeds, like the one it's shown in the picture is thistle. Thistle needs 4 applications of iron to really do a good job to suppress it. And so we can add in some iron before we do seeding, and then we save some iron applications to apply 3 weeks after seeding is the next window we can do it after the seed emerges. So late fall applications are something that we do a lot of, and we can do those usually through the whole month of October up until as long as we get 50 degrees in the day, we can apply that. When we're seeding allelopathic grass species. Those are grasses that naturally ward off unlike things. Having grass that likes to be around other grasses is a really good way to control weeds and is a very important part of our weed control process. And then this picture I wanted to also show to talk about edging. Edging is a service that we do really all season long, but we do a lot of that in the fall as well. And when you edge this kind of concrete area here, that might pop up that thistle or give us access to pull it up really easily. So something that can also kind of control the weeds that are falling over on our sidewalks. So this is a picture of edging before and after, so you can kind of see it gives it a nice clean look, nice curb appeal, but it can also help with some of those weeds that are not pleasing to the eye when they go over the sidewalk there. Creeping Charlie is another one. I think I have talked about it in every single webinar that we've had so far because it is just a very common concern. Weather can can aid or hinder the creeping Charlie. So in some years when we've been very stressful and hot, the creeping Charlie doesn't do as well as in maybe years like this where it's been quite moist in the spring and the early summer. And creeping Charlie likes moist conditions. It likes shaded areas, but it also can live in dry and sunny spots as well. You can see from this photo that it can suppress the leaves differently. So where some of them might look like they're being suppressed, some will withstand it very well. Creeping Charlie does a really good job of just putting down a new node and growing on beyond the stress. So something that we need repeat applications to continually stress it out with the iron. If we save that last application, so we can do up to 4 in a season, if we save that fourth for the late fall, then the creeping Charlie is preparing for dormancy. It's weaker. When you hit it, when it's weak, it has a better job of doing more suppression in that last application. You might notice if you have 4 applications, the first 2, it might not look like it's suppressed at all. That's because it's very good at recovering through it. And liquid iron is really our best tool, and luckily we have an organic tool for this particular weed. I'm going to just show a quick video to talk about creeping Charlie a little bit further.
Creeping Charlie is the toughest weed in Minnesota to control, even with chemicals. Being persistent and working as a neighborhood is the textbook answer to eradicate. Heavy metal
Sorry.
raking it out in the spring is helpful. Homeowners are encouraged to do so. Our organic approach to Creeping Charlie is chelated iron. Timing multiple applications correctly is our most aggressive approach. Timing of application starts in the spring or midsummer and continues through fall. Keep in mind, wind speed, temperature, and rainfall can affect the timing of our applications. Chelated iron works best in temperatures between 50 and 80 degrees and is rain fast after 1 hour. We only treat the lawn areas and do not address landscaping beds or wild areas. To successfully eradicate Creeping Charlie from your lawn, adjacent areas need to be addressed. If you have Creeping Charlie, let us know and we'll form a plan for you.
So here's a image of several different types of weed and what weeds and what they would look like when they're being suppressed by the iron. You can note it kind of turns black, purple, brown, and will start crumbling kind of around the edges. Some of those recover, some of them do not. And things like thistle, shown at the bottom left here, this one, sometimes it will go into winter. It still looks alive, but being stressed going into winter, it won't overwinter well. And so I've seen that in my own yard where it was living going into fall, and then by spring it did not emerge again. The next thing I want to talk about is the diseases. I'll go through a couple that we're seeing a lot of this summer, but just to talk about how diseases do exist in the lawn. They're not usually anything that actually kills off our home grasses, but the disease for symptoms to show, you need a host plant, so that's a grass, a pathogen that is just exists in our soil, and then the environment. So this year we saw a lot of environmental shifts. So very rainy, moist weather to very dry, humid weather. Those kind of things can really help fungal matter and spores show up and repopulate. And so just having the environment doing certain things, it might make our disease symptoms show more in our home lawns. So one disease I've seen a lot of is dollar spot. That's something we normally, you'd see in like a golf course is pretty common. It likes closely mowed turf, so that's how you'd see it in a golf course. But it prefers warm days and cool nights. It might start off looking like little circular patches of dry straw-like grass. Those will often kind of coalesce or kind of form more of a mottled look throughout the lawn that can look like drought symptoms. Um, the tricky thing is that it it likes excess moisture and drought. So keeping your lawn kind of right in the middle is a way to help get those symptoms to go away. A lot of that was out of our control this spring. The moisture that we had was out of our control. So these kind of diseases showed up. They will. For dollar spot, it does want it to be fertilized adequately. So continuing with the fertilizer program is good. And just avoiding not letting the lawn dry out too much and not providing any excess water outside of that 1 inch per week that a lawn needs to be healthy. And then ascochyta is another one that we saw a lot of this year. This one will show up overnight because it really does like those kind of very wet, cooler conditions, followed by a very hot and humid right after it, which we've had plenty of those cool nights that go into a warm day. Um, it will it will move with water. So if you see your lawn looking like this, if you can avoid some areas for mowing just to not move those spores around is helpful. But just like a lot of other diseases, once the environment changes, then the grass will start growing green again and it will recover. The crown of the grass plant doesn't die from these diseases. So this is an example of somebody that was supplementing water, like irrigating on top of rain. We said, turn the water off and see if it recovers. And it only took about 2 weeks for the lawn to switch over. So something that we can just change by changing our watering schedule. And now the services that we're going to enter into soon are our fall services. So aeration, overseeding, and organic fertilizer is a big important part of our standard program. And some of the most important things we can do for our lawn happen at this time of year. So seeding, we'll talk about timing, but we'll start our aeration and overseeding in late August. We'll do that work through the first week in October. We do look at weather. We look at weather moving forward. We have had Octobers that are consistently warm through about the third week in October. So our growing season is shifting and expanding. So that's why we safely do our October efforts. We do seeding in August as well. There, we do think about the type of grass species that we're sowing at different times of year. So if somebody is sowing tall fescue, which is a very durable, hardy grass, very good for dog traffic, most traffic tolerant and drought avoidant grasses that we have. That's a specialty grass, and that we want to put in early because it wants some warm weather. It wants more sunshine and warm conditions to germinate. The bulk of the seed that we apply are fine fescues. Those are cool season grasses. They like cool nights, but they need sunshine. So all of September is perfect for sowing those. That's where we can move. We can do those into October. All fine fescues will germinate between 3 and 10 days. So it only takes 10 days for them to germinate, and then that immature grass can overwinter much better than immature grass can over summer. The other species that we sow is Kentucky bluegrass. That would be in our sunshade mix. That's about 20% Kentucky bluegrass. Those we also will do through, we could start those in late August and we can do that through September. All the seeding that we do in October time, we'll put to that fescue only species. So talking about the right cultivars, when we handpick our cultivars each year based on NTEP studies. So we look at grasses that are doing well in Minnesota, that are allelopathic, that have good disease resistance. We want newer and better varieties than some of our older types of grasses. We're looking for them to be low maintenance, so we're setting everybody up to have a low maintenance lawn that requires less inputs, less sunlight, less nitrogen, less water requirements would be very important for us. We do customize it to your sunshade level. So both of our mixes do well in sun or shade. Our sunshade does well in both in sunny conditions and shade. Our shade only is really meant for lawns that have less sun, even though that shade mix can do fine in full sun conditions. So we're just looking at cultivars that do really well in those, and then we are picking them into our varieties. We make a diverse group of seed so that we always have seed in there that's going to do well with your the conditions of your lawn. And then again, we're looking at drought tolerance, allelopathic characteristics, and we're looking at things that are more disease resistant. And then here's another video about just the differences between spring and fall seeding. You might notice that if you did some seeding efforts in the spring, it is a little more challenging than seeding in the fall. And thinking about spring seeding, so thinking about next year, always fine to do that, the spring seeding, but know that it's more of a year-long effort. And so some of the spring seeding that might have been done, this fall seeding we're going to do now is going to help fill those in those areas in better than the spring seeding might have done.
Seeding your lawn is a process and could take several sows to completely fill, with seasonal timing being a critical component to successful establishment. Spring seeding may be necessary to repair damage from winter, grubs, or pests. Keep the following in mind when sowing in spring. Weeds establish more quickly and aggressively than grass and competition with springtime weeds may require multiple sows. Heavy spring raking and dethatching can encourage weed growth. Spring seedlings require watering and minimal traffic to mature in summer stress. Annual summer weeds also compete with germinating grass seeds. Full season grasses are best established in the fall when the nights are cooler. Consider the following when sowing in fall. Fall seeding lessens competition with weeds for a higher germination rate. Consider timing when choosing grass species for later season sowing. Fall seeding allows grass to establish well before the next stressful summer. Immature grass will overwinter better than over summer. It can take a full season of sowing for your lawn to mature into a durable stand. Overseeding each fall is a great way to continue to thicken and diversify your grass stand into a healthy, hardy lawn that naturally wards off weeds. Naturally, we can help.
So I think I've shown this slide too on some of the other webinars, and I really think it's important to continue to share it. But if you buy seed on your own, it's always important to turn the bag around and look for certain things on that seed to know what you're buying. So the guideline here, so you do want your purity of that seed to be over 85%. You want your germination rate to be over 85%. So that's the purity is going to be the type of seed that it is that seed. Germination is that it's actually going to produce grass. You want your weed seeds to be under 0.3%. Other crops to be 0.5% under that, and then inert matter to be under 8%. So you don't want a lot of other things in there. The other thing is it always should have a date tested. That should be within the last 9 months. Older seed doesn't mean it's not going to germinate, but it just could lose some of that germination rate. So having seed that's been tested more recently is going to ensure that those that it's accurate. And then some of the other things I like to point out on this is just a sample bag of seed. Anything that says annual, so this includes about 10% annual ryegrass, that means that 10% of that grass is not going to overwinter. It is an annual and it will die at the end of the season. Annuals are very often in grass mixes. One, they'll come up really quick and might serve a purpose for, maybe it's a temporary project, but if you're doing it for a home lawn, you most likely want it for the, you want it for many, many years. Whenever they say variety not stated, that is something also that you want to stay clear of. If they can't tell you what that is, it could include things that you do not want in your lawn, especially even like I've seen people have a bag of seed that they put down and in that had some kind of like what we would consider weedy seeds or weedy grasses. So it is a grass, but it doesn't look aesthetically pleasing with the rest of the stand that you probably have. So having a diversity in your grass species helps, sun-loving grasses are going to gravitate to the sun. Shade-loving grasses are going to be in the shade. When you diversify it, any environmental conditions that we're experiencing. So if we have a lot of drought, maybe there's one species that does really well, which hard fescue has been doing very, very well in our the last stressful summers that we've had. And so that's going to shine and keep the stand looking overall green. You might notice too that sometimes it's like some grasses, like your grass in certain areas might be looking a little poor or might be going dormant. And sometimes it's just the grass species. It's just protecting itself. It goes dormant. Some go dormant faster than others. So anytime you diversify what you're putting down, then you're always going to have something that's doing well with the environmental conditions that we're experiencing. Aeration is other really important thing that we do this time of year. It is where we're pulling cores of soil out of the ground and we're dispersing it on the top of the lawn. There's no need to rake that up. It might look a little messy, but it's really only messy for a week or two, and then that soil will biodegrade back into the ground. This helps us get oxygen and water and nutrients down to the root zone. It helps create space for roots to spread and grow. It's also our way of dethatching a lawn. So some of that breaking through that thatch layer and giving it some oxygen will help the microbes kind of break that up. And it's something that's you can do annually. And we would do, if you have bare areas, struggling spots, there is an opportunity for us to do a couple passes in trouble areas, but this is really meant to be a single pass to just open up some oxygen, get some of those seedlings to fall down in those little cores, and then the seed is nice and protected and can have a better chance to germinate together. So those are just note that we can do multiple passes. It isn't for new establishments. When we run the aerator and the overseeding in the lawn, we're really only dispersing about 2 pounds of seed per 1,000 square feet. For new establishment, you'd need about 3 times that amount. So something we could do every year is a good cultural practice. And you can see here just another example of what it's doing, getting some space for the water and the oxygen to come into the soil. And as you can see, the grass roots can get a little more space. And the longer the grass roots are, the healthier the grass, and the longer you keep the shoots of the grass, the longer those roots will be. And the longer those roots are, they can be chase water and nutrients easier. So they're going to be more drought resistant, more disease resistant, and be able to fight weeds better. There are areas that we can't do aeration. So in this picture shows 3 really good examples: tree roots, anything that's severely sloped, or something that's difficult for us to access with machinery. We always will have crews have C20 with them. That's a non-mechanical aeration. So it is food for microbes. Microbes will be introduced. They will repopulate in that they will respirate and they create little oxygen pockets within the soil. So they're helping improve the soil, very similar to what an aeration would be doing. And it's a way we can do some of these tough areas. You can also add C20 to any aeration. Overseeding, it really helps with root growth, is a good way to improve soil by introducing all of these microbes. So you can see here, there's an example of, treated grass with C20 and untreated. So it really it increases that microbial activity. Whenever we increase microbes in the soil, they're doing all sorts of things, but they're always helping the grass get more nutrients. They're improving the soil to do its job better. It will be decreasing the compaction. It will help with water retention and infiltration. So helping the grass use and process water better. And then it will help introduce these kind of like exhilarating or auxiliary roots. So helping the grass get these nutrients in the soil better than they could without a more complex root system. And it does that. It's just a carbon food source for microbes. So when you introduce a food, then they'll come and they'll eat that food and um, populate and respirate. And then, so the other thing we do, so that's a combination services, the aeration, overseeding, and the fall fertilizer. Fall fertilizer is always the best one for the season. The grass is preparing for dormancy, so it's storing all of its carbohydrates in its root system to prepare for overwintering. So it's going to take in nutrients much quicker, and it will also use those for spring growth. So all of the fertilizer that we're doing now is really we're going to see the efforts of that in the springtime. Um, Everything we use, so organic fertilizer needs to be broken down by microbes. So it's going to, again, introduce more microbes into the soil. It'll improve that soil structure. It's going to provide not just macro, but micronutrients, organic matter. The nice thing about organic fertilizer also is that if the plant doesn't need it at that time, it's just going to be stored in the soil until those roots of the plant will say, I need some nutrients, and those microbes will process it when they need it. And so that's what makes it slow release, and also makes it where it's nothing is wasted or washed away. It will be there for when the grass needs that nutrients. And so in that way, it's teaching your root zone to be a self-sustaining environment, very much like it would be if we didn't manipulate it. So prairies work that way. Soil does um, a lot of things when it has microbes, so how it would naturally want to work. And so we're getting the soil to be more like how it was intended to be. And so that your lawn can work as a self-sustaining environment with less and less needs of inputs over time. So fall tips, if you have little nooks and crannies, special little spaces or areas that need extra attention with seeding, you can always request a bag of seed from us one time per year. Fall's a good time for us to leave it at the door, and then you can kind of give some areas some more attention if they need it. Um, it's also a good time right now to consider if you need any extra iron applications. Choosing one in the late fall can it's kind of like a bigger bang for your buck. So if you didn't want to or aren't able to spend the money on 4 applications during the season, having one application in the late fall could be a good way to get some of those weeds that are persisting, some of those perennials. Always let us know or take a picture of which weed it is so we can let you know if the iron's going to work on it. It doesn't work on all weeds, but can work on some that are that we're going to see persist through this fall time. And then edging is another service that we can do, helping with those heat zone weeds or any just making everything look cleaned up. At the end of the year here, there's time for that as well. And that was my last slide. I don't know if I have that chat box open to make sure I can read your chats if somebody has a question, or you can just unmute yourself and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Hi, Shay.
Hi.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, would it be possible for you to do a short video demonstrating how much water we're supposed to do when you do that overseeding in the fall? Because I'm never clear. I don't know if we've washed the seed away or if we haven't given it enough, but I never know how much to water. Could you like demonstrate that for us?
Yeah, it's we will give generic recommendations, but it's hard because every sprinkler, hose, everything irrigation, what we're using is all it disperses water differently for everybody. Um, the most important thing with seed in the fall is to not let it dry out. So it really depends on how our weather is. So I say, plan to water lightly in the morning. So lightly, I would think would be like 15 minutes. Some people that might mean 10, some people might mean 20, but you're getting that seed moist. And you think about the seed that's in those the aeration cores, those are going to hold moisture much better than the seed that's sitting on top of the lawn. So you want to keep it moist. If you go, let's say you go to work, come home, then at the end of the day, you can feel the soil. If the soil is dried out, you want to put more water on it. If the soil feels like it has moisture to it, then that once a day should suffice. And it really depends on our sunlight, and it could be different parts of the lawn can be, dry out faster than others. So we put that kind of generic 1 to 3 times a day for 1 to 3 weeks. Most of so our shade only grass seed is going to be 100% fine fescues. All of those are going to germinate in 10 days. The sunshade has 20% Kentucky blue, but 80% of that is fine fescues. So the 80% is going to germinate within 10 days. So if you can keep the seed moist for that first week, that is the most important time to do it. If you can continue that on for 2 to 3 weeks, then and you have a sunny lawn, so we'll put sunshade mix there, then then you're going to have a chance for those Kentucky blues to germinate, give them the most success, because they could take up to 28 days to germinate. But in terms of, I guess I could, I could probably work on making a video sometime in the future. We have a video library on our website and also on our YouTube page. But that's a good video to show the differences of different watering techniques, and different kind of sprinkler heads. I don't have one that I recommend specifically. And then and in terms of your question about like washing away, what's nice about the seed that falls in those aeration cores aren't going to wash away, but we also don't want to like drown them. So if you see that your water is pooling in any way, if it's running off to the street, then that's too much. It just needs to be enough to keep that soil moist. Some falls, we've had some nice falls that have nice moisture, and so that soil is going to hold moisture really well just throughout the day. But we've had those really, really dry falls. I want to say it was maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we had such a dry fall that it was like you really needed to water that 2, 3 times a day to keep that moisture for that first week to get that seed to germinate. So I don't know if that answered it. It's kind of a tricky question. But I can certainly add a video library and try to add the demonstration of watering to that library.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. And now I see the chat. So we did talk about crabgrass, and so I'll just mention it again, and we'll put this video up on YouTube and on our website. But crabgrass is one that right now it's a little past the tiller stage that is effective to even control it with chemicals. So it's most easily controlled in the first tiller stage, which we really see in the beginning of July. That's when it first emerges. Some people don't. I get a question a lot about, I don't know if this is quack grass or I don't know if this is crabgrass. Most likely, if you have a grass that you didn't see earlier, and then after the 4th of July, you see some kind of limey green grasses come up, usually along heat zones, so along your driveway, along the road, along sidewalks, south-facing slopes, any place that didn't have snow cover. That is most likely it's crabgrass. It's our warm season grass. It emerges now. When people see a grassy weed in the spring, that is most likely quackgrass. That's one that quackgrass we don't see as well as we get through the season. You could see it very well in the springtime because it's greener than our other grasses. And quackgrass is a perennial grassy weed. We don't have any solution because the corn can't prevent it. The iron is not rated for anything grassy, so iron will not work on any grassy weeds. That's why we can blanket spray the lawn, because the grass is a monocot. It will take up the iron as a micronutrient. It will green it up. Broadleaf weeds, some of them, so it's disguised as an amino acid. So some of them will taken too much iron and overdose on it. Some aren't receptive at all, so they don't get harmed by it at all. So the iron doesn't work on all weeds, but doesn't work on anything that's grassy. And so crabgrass, unfortunately, it is right now what we would do is you can always let us know in the office if you have a significant crabgrass issue. Um, we can put you on our early list for corn gluten next year. We can increase our corn gluten. We can do extra seeding this fall to help, thick, healthy grass is going to help outcompete it. And when that crabgrass starts to die, which it will when the weather cools, it will kind of flatten and create space for the soil to be bare next spring. So we want to get some seed to replace it. So you can always request seed from us, and you can kind of do extra seeding in your heat zone areas or the areas the crabgrass is. You can pull it. Some people feels good to pull it. You can certainly pull it. Replace it with grass seed would be a good solution. You don't have to pull it because it will just die and it will decompose. But with the aeration and seeding, we're going to want to try to fill those in with more grass. Desirable grass species to have a better competition, as you just don't want bare soil in the spring.
Mhm.
Because crabgrass will easily fill in there. So that's why spring seeding is a little bit tricky too, because you're always going to have competition. Like crabgrass will start germinating when the soil is 55 degrees, and seed needs to usually have the soil be 55 degrees to germinate. So we're at the same window of opportunity, and so it's a tricky balance. So I think it was Scott that had the question about crabgrass. Let me know if you have something more specific, because I'd be happy to answer that. So will this video be available later? Yes. I'll put this on. So our YouTube is if you just search Organic Lawns by Lunseth YouTube, you should be able to find our page. It's got all of our videos on there. And then our website has a page that's just our video library. We haven't done any recently besides these webinars, but we have done a couple years of mini videos on common topics, trying to make them very short, but answer questions there. And then in those previous webinar videos, I have had shown what type of weeds the iron works on. We also have a nice PowerPoint on that. We have a slideshow and like a PDF. So if you ever want us to email that, then you can have a picture of the weed, and then it will say what the iron, if it's rated for it or not. Plantains need really 3 to 4 iron applications to suppress. Plantains are also one where they love compaction. So we want to think about, can we double aerate? Can we add C20? Things that help compact the soil won't provide the environment for that plantain to thrive anymore. I've also seen plantains like post maybe a landscaping construction work, then where the trucks may have driven over, they might have lots of plantains in them. Places where maybe somebody's piling snow that kind of compacts the soil in certain spots might have plantains. Knotweed's another one that loves compacted soil. And plantains are perennial, so it's not going to be prevented with the corn gluten, but that multiple applications of iron will work, especially on those like thicker bladed, thicker leafed plants. Thistle, plantains, they need more iron because it just takes a lot to get through to actually get it to suppress. White clover also is one that we can suppress with 4 applications of iron. One application will not kill clover, and clover is a tricky one because we may not say, oh, you have clover in your lawn. Might I suggest multiple irons? Because we have a lot of people that sow clover, a lot of people that want clover. So it's hard for us to know if somebody wants it or if somebody deems it as a weed. So let us know if you don't want clover. You have to have 4 applications of iron. And with a lot of these weeds, you just want to be persistent. Clover will just find its way. It also is sometimes if somebody like maybe didn't do anything in the lawn for a couple years and then it's coming back and doing a program, clover will exist in lawns that need fertilizer because it is a natural fertilizer. And so if you keep some in your lawn, it helps fertilize the lawn. It's good for our bees. So that's why a lot of people sow it. And then Creeping Charlie. You need 4 applications of it. It won't be suppressed until that third or fourth. For some homes that have very severe Creeping Charlie problems, we can do a fifth, like very late October, just in a spot spray manner, especially if it's like in a contained area. Then we'll do a fifth application and really hit that Creeping Charlie when it's weak, when it's preparing for dormancy. If you hit it when it's weak, it has a better job of eradicating it. Creeping Charlie, though, I would say we will never get it 100%. Even with chemicals, it's very hard to get it. And even if you get it, like my home, I've gotten it out of my lawn several times. It doesn't mean it won't find a way back in in the future. So we might get rid of it for a couple years, and then I'll see it kind of creeping through again. Wherever you see it creeping from, let's say it's coming from a wild area, a neighbor, something like that, then you can do some heavy metal raking. So rake that Charlie back to where it's coming from. Sometimes you can get that. It doesn't like to put energy in where it's getting stressed. And so just like the iron stresses it out, it puts on a new node and it will grow beyond that. If you're raking it out, it will try to put its energy into the areas it's not getting stressed out as much. So that can be something to try, especially in the spring when you first see it come in. If it's small, a little area, if you can rake it toward where it's coming. In the fall, you can do that as well. Or you can also request like a late fall application of iron, and we can see what we can do late in the season to get that to be suppressed. Textbook answer for Creeping Charlie is work as a neighborhood. Not always possible, and to be persistent. So be persistent with whatever effort you're doing, and just continuing at it, and knowing that even sometimes people put in sod and they think that solves the issue. If it can find a way, I've seen it creep over bushes, I've seen it creep over sidewalks. It's a very persistent and stubborn weed. Um, Wild violets is another one. Wild violets, we do not have a solution for. They are perennial, so the corn gluten won't work on it, and the iron is not rated for wild violets. They are very easy to pull if you like after a rainstorm, when it's moistened soil, they have very shallow root systems, so they should be able to be plucked out pretty easily. They have a little bit of pollinator benefit, not a huge amount, but having some, if you can stand some in the lawn, that's something that we suggest if you don't want to hand pull it. It is, when we say after 3 years of being on our program, we can get any lawn 95% weed free. It's at 5 to 10%. We can't, wild violets would fall in that 5 to 10% that we just don't have a solution for.
Okay.
Yeah, and you just want to take it over, yeah. And usually, wild violets, I've noticed it more as like a neighborhood situation. So, some neighborhoods have a lot more of it than others. And I would have to look up the characteristics of wild violets to know what in conditions. I think they like shade, but a lot of times when I see them in a lawn, if I assess a lawn, then I kind of think about those things. Why is that weed there? And what can we do to manage it, or what can we tolerate? What plant identification app do you recommend? The one that I use is one from Purdue. Let's see. Purdue has one called Turf Doctor. They also have a Tree Doctor. Those are very like academic based apps on your phone that you can use. I do a lot of iNaturalist as well to identify lots of different things. I don't always rely on apps. I take a lot of pictures and then use textbooks to identify things because sometimes I think the apps, some of them might give us things that that shouldn't exist in Minnesota. They give us the wrong information. So, and I actually subscribe to a lot of Facebook groups on plants, and there are some very, very helpful ones that people just put something out there and you will have 100 people tell you what that is. Some of them are not right, but some of them usually get the right answer in there somewhere. So Facebook groups, I think Minnesota Naturalists is the one that I participate on the most. So I've been digging out plantains just to open up the soil to get ready for seeding. I use what Hori Hori knife, which is a great tool. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And yeah, plantains, that's a really good strategy that Beverly's talking about is if you want to pull some weeds, if you do it before we seed, so we can get some grass to fill in those bare spots, um, it's a much better way for your energy because we have a lot less competition with weeds right now. Pulling weeds in the spring sometimes just invite weeds to fill in those spaces before the seed will germinate. So weed control right now it's the best window for it. I typically don't mow at all, only when you guys are coming out, but not sure if I'm mowing low enough or if I should bag the clippings. Can you clarify what's best? So we always recommend to not bag the clippings. Clippings are free fertilizer. When we are thinking about our overall fertilizer program, we're always assuming you're recycling your clippings, which means you're just not bagging them. But you would know best that if you have the lawn cut is high enough and you cut it, you also, you don't want to smother the grass and then, you know,
Okay.
prevent the sunlight from coming in. So if you have like,
Big
too
clumps.
many clippings, you can rake them, you can blow them, kind of disperse them around, but you don't want to have too much clippings on the lawn. Um, you never want to cut off more than 1/3 of the grass blade. So grass gets stressed every time we mow it. It doesn't, the grasses we use for home lawns they mow really well, but it doesn't mean that they prefer to be mowed. So every time we do it, we're stressing them out. But if we cut them too short, it will stress them way out to the point that they could, a lot of times what you'll see is weeds will fill in, or they'll go dormant, or they could die. So, just being careful on how you cut that down and not cutting off more than 1/3 would be the right approach. And yeah, it's different grass species too. The fine fescues really don't need to be cut very often. Like a bee lawn that contains mostly fine fescues, they say cut every 3 to 4 weeks. But it's all about our aesthetics and what we can handle. And sometimes it's also you're allowing for a bee lawn, you're allowing those flowering plants to flower. If that in some plants that can be encouraging them to spread the seed. So that's why we would, keeping the lawn cut as high as we can, but mowing it, every 2 weeks, like a slow mow through the summer allows some of those flowering plants to provide some pollinator food and habitat, while allowing, and the grass can do just fine, but then cutting those so we don't spread too many of the seeds to have those weeds like outcompete our grasses. Um, yes, and then will your applicator guys let us know if we didn't mow low enough? That they will. So there's some applications that are more important than others for us to not have long grass. So iron is one where we want to be able to get at the weeds. And so if the lawn is too long, like sometimes if somebody was participating in no mow May and we come for iron, we will let the homeowner know that we've skipped the lawn and we would want to come back when it's mowed, because it's not going to get to where it needs to get to be effective. So if we can't be effective with the product, we will let you know. Same for aeration. You don't have to have it super short, but if it were too long where those aeration cores weren't getting to the soil, that would be too much barrier for us. And so the crews would stop. And what they always do is they typically are going to call the office, and then we're going to communicate to the homeowner that we'll return when the grass is cut a bit lower. So they won't necessarily. They'll always let us know if they don't think it will be successful. It is always up to them, so it's their judgment. The other thing I do see, and I always note it to people, but if I come and assess a lawn, if I notice that the lawn is too short, I will try to let homeowners know that, because especially during this hot summer weather, you want to keep it as high as you can stand it. But we also have challenges with our mowers and how high and low they go. So sometimes it's somebody else is mowing the lawn, so you just want to let them know to kind of keep it high. But right now, keeping it at 4 inches is a really good strategy. any more than that too is great. The longer the grass is, the more it can cover up the soil so that it prevents low-lying weeds from germinating, and it also protects the crown of that grass plant. And then like I said earlier, the longer the grass is, the root system will mimic that length. So then the root system will be longer. And so that grass is going to be more drought resistant. And when it's healthy, it withstands diseases, insects, weeds, all better when it's healthy. And oh yeah, we were able to adjust crabgrass. It seems to be aggressively taking over the lawn. Happy to review the video. Yep. So yeah, Carmen, we went over crabgrass a couple times, but yes, it is very prevalent this year, and it's because of the lack of snow cover from winter. Some of the things like we had knotweed that the U recorded the earliest ever germinating in February because it was warm and there was no snow. So crabgrass, any area that the soil heated up to 55 degrees before we could get out there with corn gluten has an opportunity for crabgrass to be in there. So along sidewalks, on corners, south-facing slopes, it is, and it doesn't necessarily take over the existing grass. It's just out competing it right now. But you think about they have a small little crown of the grass plant. And even when something like grows up and it looks really big, it's still small and it can live with other grasses. And so when our cool season grasses go dormant or we're struggling this spring, the crabgrass is going to fill in those spots. Other weeds are going to fill in those spots. So if we can get grass to be thick in those areas, it's helpful for weed control. If we can have, the springs that are nice and cool and long work so much better for that corn gluten or any even like chemical pre-emergent. It works really well for them to have time to work before those seeds germinate. The hardest time is when we go from cold to 80 degrees. It's rapid, and our cool season grasses don't know what to do with that, but crabgrass loves that. So every year, new opportunity to prevent in the spring, new challenges with winter or how our springs are going, and that there still might be grass in underneath that crabgrass. It's just when it dies out, it's going to flatten. And so it's going to protect itself by trying to smother everything and create open soil. So that seeding in the fall is really important. After it dies, if you want us to leave seed to go into the little heat zone areas and to along sidewalks and get more seed established, it's a really good way to help set on a better foot come next spring. And we might have a crabgrass video. I'll have to look. We have 3 videos that are grassy weeds and identifying them. And crabgrass would be included in there. But this year, even with commercial properties, been pretty significant. Do you have a program for caring for garden beds, such as shrub fertilization? Also, when is the best time to apply new mulch? That's a good question. We are constantly considering doing garden bed maintenance. Right now, we don't do garden bed maintenance. We are happy to share a lot of referrals for companies that do that. Right now, there is Home Sow Gardens is a good one. There is a woman who's got a company called the Sassy Daffodil. She does garden maintenance, but she also teaches people, what plants to keep, what to get rid of, how to maintain the yard sustainably. Some other ones, Home Sown. Amy Chapman from Amy Gardens, she does a lot of, I believe, garden maintenance still. And applying new mulch can really be done any time of year. What's nice is that some companies, in the off season, they might have availability to do it. I don't know. I think fall and spring are really the great times to mulch. I think spring is nice because it freshens it up and then you're fresh for the season. And you really want to have that mulch at least 3 inches thick to prevent weeds. So thickening it up every year to maintain that 3 inches is important. Doing so now, I know I'd have to check with our landscaping department, but I'm pretty sure we do a lot of it now too, because it gives a nice fresh, clean look now. It'll help cover everything for winter, and then in the spring you're protected from the weeds germinating in that mulch if it's nice and thick. Um, but yeah, the shrubs fertilization too. Um, that one I don't know. I don't know exactly which resource. I have different resources for different areas. Anita, I can reach out to you about shrubs and see who I might have that might know how to fertilize those specifically. Oh, yeah. So do we come out and estimate how much mulch is needed? Because some of them are almost bare and some are okay. Yeah. I'd have to check on that if we would do that. I don't know how to do that kind of work. I'm sure people in our landscaping department do. Um, and they usually can just look eyeball and say the yards. And so I could talk to Paul about that and see if he can do that. There's also places like Magnuson Sod, also known as Clear's Nursery. They can also drop mulch on someone's driveway if you want to do the work yourself too. And then somebody could say, "Oh yeah, drop off." 3 yards of mulch, and then you can pitchfork it into the areas that need it more than others. Any other questions? I think I got it. I'm scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss any. Um, And I knew crabgrass was going to be an issue because it's pretty prevalent out there this year.